As Montreal prepares to celebrate the 375th anniversary of its founding, Mountain Lake PBS is proud to present the 5-part film series, Montréal, Mon Amour, Mon Histoire. Each film explores aspects of a given historic area of the city, from the old port of Montreal to the industrial east side of the city, from Mount Royal to the Street of Immigrants, Saint Laurent Boulevard, and of course, downtown Montreal. When you support Mountain Lake PBS with a one-time contribution of $75, we'll thank you with either the DVD or Blu-ray of The River and Its Island. The DVD and Blu-ray contain both the English and French versions of the film. With a generous one-time contribution of $180, we'll thank you with the complete 5-film box set of Montréal, Mon Amour, Mon Histoire on either DVD or Blu-ray. Along with The River and Its Island, the set contains the films Maisonneuve, Cradle of Industry, Around the Mountain, La Main, Street of Immigrants, and Downtown, The Age of Lights. The box set contains both the English and French versions of the films. Celebrate Montreal's 375th anniversary with a gift to yourself and your community when you become a supporter of Mountain Lake PBS. Call or go online to mountainlake.org right now. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us tonight as we begin our preliminary celebrations of Montreal's 375th anniversary with tonight's documentary. I am Jen Kowalczyk here with Mountain Lake PBS, and I am joined by Ronit Yaroski of Canadian Friends of Mountain Lake PBS.
And I'm so excited to be here. Je suis vraiment ravie d'être ici avec vous ce soir. This is such an incredible celebration of our city, of Montreal, of our heritage and our history. We have Paul Carvalho, the director, in studio. Stay tuned to hear more of his fascinating interviews on how he made the film and all the exciting elements that are in it.
And don't go anywhere because, again, we will hear from Paul Carvalho and another few community members as well tonight. But we are taking just a very short break to remind you that we cannot be here without your support. It is so important that we hear from you by giving us a call. We've already got some phoners on our speaking with our volunteers, so give them a count. We want to keep them busy, so call the number on your screen, or you can visit us online at mountainlake.org as well. You know, this story, telling this story, is such an integral to our mission here. We are local storytellers that we want to bring what we have in our region, everything that we know, and bring it back to you so that you can see it. So it's not just about here we are here in Plattsburgh, but so much of our support comes from Montreal that we want to acknowledge that and really be here to tell your stories as well.
That's right. 60% of our support comes from Montreal and Quebec and Ontario, and it's so important for us to know that Canada and Montreal and Quebec is really a big part of what we do here. We need your support. We want to continue to bring you incredible programs and involve our community in the way that we do. So please pick up the phone, call the number on your screen, visit our website. Vous pouvez également le faire en français avec plaisir. Téléphonez-nous dès maintenant.
Thank you again for being with us tonight. And we are very lucky to have the producer of this film series, Paul Carvalho, here with Tom Halleck.
Thank you, Jen and Ronit. Yes, we are indeed privileged to have Paul Carvalho here with us tonight, talking about the making of this film. Jen was just talking about that, the many people you talked to for this film, and we just saw one, the marine archaeologist who led you to the remains of the Lady Sherbrooke, one of John Molson's steamships. He really changed the history of Canada in so many ways. He's one of the most famous names of Montreal, John Molson, but not only did he open his brewery, but as we saw, he really changed travel between Montreal and Quebec City and really played an important role in Canada's history.
That's right. If you had talked to me, say 10 years ago before I started making these films, I would have said, of course, John Molson's the guy who made the beer, and that, you know, this brewery is still there in Montreal by the river. But what I didn't know, and that what I surmise many Montrealers don't know, is that he also brought steam navigation to Canada, and this was incredibly important. This is not a simple thing because a steamboat could not be brought in across the Atlantic. You had to make the engines in England, and then these engines had to be transported here on a transatlantic ship. And then those engines would have to be installed on a riverboat that was made to British specifications in Montreal. And the whole thing would only be good for about 5 years because the ships would then, they were made out of wood, and then the wood would begin to warp, and you'd have to make another ship. So John Molson had some like 30 boats over the years He had a whole fleet, but not all the boats at once. He had to replace them constantly.
Every few years.
And exactly, and so the place that made the boats, the shipyard, was right next to his brewery.
And these are sunken treasures. They're there, but out of sight. And it was just your fortune that as you were making the documentary, the water levels were low that year, and lo and behold, there was one of the sunken vessels.
Exactly. Jean Bellil spent 2 decades examining, looking for the vestiges of these boats that were stationed there and then covered with water. He didn't know where they were, so they had to look all over a considerable range, because they'd heard from people who lived in the area that, you know, the boats used to be stationed here. So he went looking for them with his helpers, with his assistants. And when we were there, Jean Bellil got incredibly excited and said, look, the drought we've had, that it has affected the river to such a point that you can see what I was looking for all these years. And he really got as excited as you see in the film. He just couldn't believe that he could show his companion, the expert on John Molson, said, this is the ship. And of
And
course,
that would be one of the older shipwrecks in Quebec.
that's correct, yes, and in Canada. Jean Bellil also found in Quebec City the postal box that was made, that was transported from Montreal to Quebec City and back, which it is the oldest postal box in the history of Canada. And he is the proud owner of this box. This is revolutionary and far more important than beer, that all of a sudden you could write a letter in Quebec and post it before midnight, and the person who would be reading the letter would read it the next day at 6 p.m. And it was as revolutionary at that time as the internet is today. That feeling that you can instantaneously communicate with people. And this Jean Bellil was not exaggerating. This was a revolution, the way people thought about communications. This affects every area of life.
We saw one of the other entrepreneurs, Hugh Allen. He created the fleet of ships that would bring the immigrants across the Atlantic, and then most of them ending up in Montreal, and that's what we get into in the third part of the film coming up in just a couple of minutes. This really was the beginning of the industrial age when that port came alive in Montreal.
That's right. Well, Hugh Allen, his father was in the shipbuilding, in the ship transportation, the transportation by ship in Scotland. So the father sends him to Montreal very early on. He says, you're going to perfect your accounting skills. And once he felt his son was ready for action, then they start, Hugh is receiving the ships in Montreal, which are coming from the British Empire. Yeah. And these ships are absolutely instrumental in bringing tens of thousands of new immigrants to Canada. So incredibly important to the history of the city as well. And now today, this is a hospital that treats psychiatric patients, the Allen Memorial. And you know, I lived for years within distance of the Allen Memorial Hospital, and I am sad to say that I didn't know who the memorial was for. Who was this Allen man? So this is one of the pleasures of working on the history of Montreal. What you never knew becomes apparent. The history reveals itself to you.
All right, Paul, thank you. We will talk with you a little more coming up in just a few minutes. Right now, though, let's send it over to Bill McElligott. Bill?
Thanks, Tom. And I am Bill McElligott, Director of Content and Finance here at Mountain Lake PBS. And we are so thankful that you are here watching this wonderful work by filmmaker Paul Carvalho, the first edition of a 5-part series, Montreal, Mon Amour, Mon Histoire, which we are very pleased to be presenting in this television premiere of the English language version. This is really important as a part of our mission to inspire enrich and engage with our communities with this kind of meaningful storytelling and education about what's happening throughout our region. And it strikes me as I'm watching this wonderful film that the story of Montreal really resonates on both sides of our border. The story of the French-Canadian influence on indeed our entire region throughout northern New York, Vermont, and Quebec. This is really a wonderful story. We are so pleased to be bringing it to you. But this kind of television programming, this kind of real engaging local storytelling is not possible without your support. So we ask you to please call that number on your screen. We have some wonderful volunteers behind me from our board of directors and other volunteers from within our community. We can't exist without that kind of community spirit for what public television, what public media can really be all about. And speaking of that sort of community support, our own Paul Larson is standing by now with a gentleman who is a business owner here in northern New York, who is supporting us as an underwriter, as a business owner, and also as a volunteer, as a member of our community advisory board, and that's Justin Stearns. Paul, let's introduce him.
Thank you so much, Bill. And Justin Barrett Stearns, thank you for joining us in our studio.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
You're the owner of Plattsburgh Knife Company.
That's right.
And you were born in Peru, New York, not too far from here.
Not too far from here.
So what is your interest in this great city that's just an hour north of us?
Yeah, well, on my mother's side of the family, you know, they all come from Canada, Quebec, Ontario. So I've got a lot of history in Canada. And then, you know, the North Country in New York especially is really dependent upon Canada for a lot of resources. You know, 15% of our population is employed by a Canadian-owned company. So I think by using this film as, you know, education and the opportunity to really learn and tie that community together in a stronger way. So.
Exactly, and it's a 5-part film series.
It's amazing.
And you've been getting a chance to look at a little bit of it tonight. Why do you think it is so vital that we're enjoying a 5-part film series on the history of Montreal?
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting that I think history can get lost in a lot of ways, and in this new age of globalization, having such an important film at such an important time in the world, dig into our roots, see where we came from, and see how we can build upon that foundation that is Montreal, that is the North Country, and it's just an awesome opportunity.
Well, Plattsburgh Knife Company is an underwriter on the series. We want to thank you for that,
Yeah,
for supporting our program. Why was it important for you to link the name of your company to this Montreal-oriented show on Mountain Lake PBS?
Yeah, well, again, you know, my personal interest in history with my family is so deeply tied to Canada and that area, but in general, just as a community member and as a community leader and as a part of PBS and everything that is, you know, Plattsburgh, the North Country, and Montreal, you know, PBS is the glue that binds these things together, and I'm just doing everything I can to be a part of that in any way. So.
Well, you've mentioned community building and how important that is to you. How does watching this documentary and being a part of it, how does that help with community building?
Well, Plattsburgh Knife Company was, you know, Plattsburgh's got a long history of knife making, right? And not a lot of people know that, and I'm trying to dig into that, and that's where we can build upon things. So if we can grab things out of this documentary series and build across that and build our community upon that, it's just a stronger, you know, foundation is what makes a house, you know?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us again. We're going to talk to you in a little bit, but first we're going back to Jen and Ronit.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Justin, so much for being a volunteer on our Community Advisory Board and also for supporting this film series. Again, we are here just to take a quick break to remind you that this type of programming, these local stories, are not possible without your support. Programming is not free. It costs money to make, it costs money to acquire, and we can't get it for you without your support. So if you appreciate this kind of programming, please take the time right now to go from being a passive viewer to an active member of Mountain Lake PBS by calling the number on your screen, or you can visit us online at mountainlake.org too.
Exactement, ça comme ma collègue Jen a dit, on a besoin de votre appui précieux. C'est très important pour nous pour vous donner ces programmes, ces programmations, ces films sur Montréal, sur Québec et beaucoup plus que ça. S'il vous plaît, téléphonez le numéro que vous voyez sur votre écran ou bien visitez notre site web.
We have plenty of good ways to say thank you when you make your call of support right now. But I'll remind you that this is not, you're not just making a purchase here when you call in to support Mountain Lake PBS. You're making a donation, and we're sending you a thank you gift. So when you call and make a donation of $75 to become a member right now, you can receive the DVD or the Blu-ray of The River and Its Island. And of course, that's available in both English and in French on the same disc. So you don't have to pick, you get both. And when you decide to make a generous contribution of $180, you can receive the complete five film box set of the Montreal Monomar Monissoir on either DVD or on Blu-ray, again in both English and in French. So the important thing is that you decide to make a call, and if one of those levels doesn't work for you, that's okay. You can give in any amount that works for you.
Absolutely. We really appreciate your support. It's so necessary. We're so grateful that you're with us tonight. Please call the number on your screen. Visit our website. We have amazing volunteers here with us. Anyone will be happy to speak to you. Dans la langue de votre choix, les DVD, les Blu-rays sont disponibles dans la langue de votre choix, en anglais et en français. On a besoin de votre appui.
And while you take the time to make your call right now, let's hear a little bit more from Paul Carvalho and Tom Halleck.
All right, thanks, Jen and Ronit. We appreciate it. Paul, welcome back. Coming up, we are now going to see the era in Montreal where finally they conquer the Lachine Rapids and say, we're going to put that river to work for the city. And they create the canal that's going to bring in the water to power the factories, power the turbines that run the factories. And it really is the beginning of the industrial age in Montreal.
It's incredible. The people who live now around on the edges of the Lachine Canal see this canal that they think was used basically for navigation. Mm-hmm. Yes, it was. It was very important that way. But there's also these huge brick buildings on either side of the canal that are now empty with the enormous brick chimneys. And these places are where Canada's industrial age began. And so what you had was the canal bringing water with great force that would then activate these wheels that would directly activate the factory wheels that made the products they made. So they could not even control the strength and the speed at which these wheels turned inside the factories, which made them incredibly dangerous. But this is how we made our first hammers, our first shovels, many of the industrial things that were absolutely essential for agriculture in the rest of the country and for the building trades. So tremendous historical importance for this area of the Lachine Canal. And it's great that we preserved it.
Absolutely. And for many of us in the States that come to visit Montreal, of course, to get on the island, many of us will take the Champlain Bridge. If the Champlain Bridge is under construction, which it tends to be from time to time, and will be over the next few years, Victoria Bridge is another option. And in its day,
That's right.
the Victoria Bridge was really a monumental project that connected the island of Montreal over the St. Lawrence to the port of Portland and the Atlantic coast, and really opened
Portland, Maine. Yes.
a new era of trade with Britain and with Europe. That was really the eighth wonder of the world, Prince Albert called it at the time.
Absolutely. No, they had to develop new engineering methods to build this bridge. It was unprecedented. It was like the shot to the moon in its time. And it inspired people who study engineering, because it came to be seen as something daring to do. You're going to create, you could potentially create something as grandiose as this bridge that today is one more bridge. But as some people say, look, there are bridges that are being rebuilt in Montreal, but the oldest of them all is still standing and is still doing its duty. Well, we're going to talk about, in what's coming up, we're going to talk about how it came to be and how it's tied to the fate of the great photographer of the 19th century, Mr. Notman, whose first job was to photograph the making of this bridge.
To document the construction of the
Correct,
bridge.
exactly.
And his technique is still one that people marvel at today, which we'll see coming up in just a couple of minutes, just not to give it away yet, but just amazing, his style of photography.
The most amazing thing, one of the most amazing things I found over the making of these 5 films that took 6 years of my life, was that every one of William Notman's negatives, which were on glass, exists unbroken in perfect condition within the McCord Museum. And we were then in the inner sanctum of the museum, where these negatives are all, each one is inside its own special case, and they're taken out by an attendant with gloves, and it's an incredibly delicate process, and you cannot handle them. And we were allowed in there for like 20 minutes to film very specific things. It was an honor, an incredible privilege to be there and to see how the history of the city, of 100 years of history, could be preserved so beautifully.
It is breathtaking, and we are going to see that coming up in just a couple of moments. Right now, let's send it over to Paul.
Thank you, Tom. Justin Barrett Stearns is the owner of Plattsburgh Knife Company. How long has that company existed, and what is it known for?
Yeah, it's not known for much right now, as we're a really new company and we're really excited to be here. Plattsburgh Knife Company is the second company I've opened here, but yeah, we're known for our knives, but really what we'd like to be known for is just another company that's really ingrained in the community and likes to get involved, you know.
So you're helping create a sense of place.
A sense of place. I mean, that's why we chose the name Plattsburgh Knife Company. There's a long history of knife making in Plattsburgh, and we really wanted to embody that in a way that was much greater than ourselves, you know.
Well, you also own Max Safe and Lock, and you're helping keep the Mountain Lake PBS studio safe with your locks. Now, how else can we keep Mountain Lake PBS secure? Why is it important that our viewers on both sides of the border call in tonight with a pledge of support?
That comment on security is a two-way street. You know, how can we keep PBS secure? Well, obviously by supporting it and valuing what it is that PBS brings to us, and then vice versa. What we get in return for that is PBS keeps us secure. You know, education is the foundation of a secure community, and we're just really grateful. And I think that if people enjoy the security and the sense of community that is around here, the best thing they can do is show that support and help PBS tonight. So.
And what kinds of PBS programming do you personally value?
I value Curious George, I think, more than anything. It helps my daughter so much. It's like I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old daughter, and they live on that. And you know, I grew up with Arthur and other shows. I mean, PBS has just been a part of my entire life, and I'm just so excited to be a part of it now. Yeah,
and you get to enjoy Curious George as an adult along with your family, but I know a lot of adults who just enjoy the show.
I'm going to be honest, I enjoy the show just as much, so it's really important to me.
And we're enjoying this program tonight about Montreal, and we're learning about, eventually in the series, we're going to learn about the construction of this area that we now call Old Montreal. Now, you said your family lives up in Montreal. Do you have memories of Old Montreal?
Old Montreal was the place. So growing up, we went to Montreal, you know, twice a month at least. And Old Montreal, the cobblestone, and I think we all have memories as a child that are ingrained with smells or textures and stuff. And really, that cobblestone path and just the safety of Montreal and the cleanliness of Montreal has always been such a great appeal to me. Yeah.
I also understand you enjoy going to a place that I like as well, St. Joseph Oratory.
Yeah, that's kind of another special place. I used to sit up top in the balcony with the organ player, and I'm a piano player. And as a child and an aspiring piano player, there was nothing more exciting to be in the North America's largest pipe organ in Montreal and just be a part of that and to hear the beautiful music from it. So
the beautiful music, the beautiful building, and just climbing up those stairs is an adventure, especially when you're little.
Especially when you're little, yeah, it's very intimidating. And then sitting up there and there's just this massive, you know, space, and it's just taken up so much by the most beautiful sounds you can imagine, and it's just really a special opportunity.
Well, we're going to be learning about the oratory later on in the film series, and right now we're going to go back to Jen and Ronit.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here with you again. And Justin, I'm so excited to hear you mentioning all these great places in Montreal that I'm so proud of. And I know you, all you Montrealers and people around Montreal are so proud of and so excited. And with our big 375th birthday coming up, this is such a great reason to support Mountain Lake PBS and call in and get a thank you gift of this incredible movie set, this box set, or the series that we're watching here today. S'il vous plaît, téléphonez-nous. On a besoin de votre appui. C'est une énorme célébration avant nous cette année.
Thank you to Justin, thank you to Paul, thank you to all of our wonderful volunteers. I think there's a few of them that are not on the phone yet, so now is your chance. Give them a call. The number is right on your screen, or you can, of course, visit mountainlake.org. Make your donation, become a supporter of Mountain Lake PBS. It is so important. But right now, let's head back to the film.